For more than 40 years, there's been this strategic, ideological war raging in the Middle East. It's a conflict that has truly shaped our modern world. But here's the catch. It's never actually been declared. This is the story of that shadow war, the one between Iran, Israel, and the United States.
This quote from our source material just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures what this whole thing is about. It's a clandestine battle, right? It's not fought on traditional battlefields with tanks and planes. No, it's fought through proxies, assassinations, cyber attacks, and this constant, high-stakes game of nuclear brinkmanship.
And what makes this story so wild, so compelling, is this unbelievable flip. I mean, it is almost impossible to imagine now, but before 1979, the United States and Israel, they weren't Iran's enemies. Far from it. They were its closest, most important allies. So how on earth did we get from that to this? Well, the answer really lies in one single seismic event that just completely shattered that alliance: the Iranian Revolution of 1979.
Before the revolution, if you look at it on paper, this partnership made a ton of sense. For the U.S., the Shah's Iran was this stable, oil-rich pillar against Soviet influence in the Cold War. And for Israel, which was pretty isolated in a hostile Arab world, a pro-Western, non-Arab Iran was a natural, even crucial partner. I mean, the alliance was so deep that Israel was selling Iran over $1 billion in sensitive military tech. But underneath that surface, resentment was just boiling over. A lot of Iranians saw the Shah's regime as corrupt, oppressive, and basically propped up by the West. And when the protests finally exploded, the collapse was just breathtakingly fast. In just a little over a month, the entire old order was completely swept away. And here's what Washington and Tel Aviv completely failed to grasp: the sheer scale of this movement. This wasn't some fringe group. When Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile, an estimated 10 million people flooded the streets of Tehran to welcome him. It was a massive, popular uprising that would forever change the country, the region, and the world.
And if there was any hope at all of a working relationship with this new regime, well, this event just destroyed it. The 444-day hostage crisis became the searing symbol of the break, cementing this deep, lasting animosity between Iran and the United States that, as we know, persists to this day.
So, with direct relations totally severed, the conflict didn't end, not at all. It just changed form. It moved into the shadows, and it found a brand new battleground: the war-torn nation of Lebanon. And here, you can just see this clear chain of unintended consequences. Israel's invasion, it succeeds in its goal of kicking out the PLO, but in doing so, it creates a massive power vacuum. Iran sees its chance. It seizes the opportunity, sending its elite revolutionary guards to organize the local Shiite population, and from that is born what would become its most powerful and successful proxy, Hezbollah. And with this new proxy came a terrifying new tactic. The bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut was an absolutely shocking message. It introduced a new form of asymmetrical warfare that Western military powers were completely unprepared for. And it worked. It drove the U.S. right out of Lebanon. This quote, "Wow," it's just staggering. It brilliantly illustrates the strategic blindness of both Israel and the U.S. at the time. You see, while they were so focused on their old enemy, the PLO, they had no idea that their own actions were helping to create a new, much more formidable threat that they knew absolutely nothing about. So as this proxy war is raging, a new and, frankly, far more existential threat begins to emerge. It's one that would come to define this conflict for decades: the race for a nuclear weapon. After the first Gulf War, the U.S. tried to build a whole new regional order. They organized this big conference in Madrid, inviting everyone to the table to talk peace. Well, everyone except Iran. Still seen as a pariah state, Iran was left out. And that exclusion, it just deepened its isolation and its conviction that this new U.S.-led order was fundamentally aimed against it. So Iran basically decided that if it couldn't be a partner in this new order, it would become the leader of the opposition. It ramped up support for militant groups who were opposed to the peace process, creating what it calls the axis of resistance to actively challenge American and Israeli influence in the region. Then, after 9/11, we get another one of these incredible moments, a real fork in the road. Iran and the U.S. actually shared a common enemy in the Taliban, and Iran provided vital intelligence to help the U.S. in Afghanistan. But just as it seemed like a thaw was possible,
President Bush declared Iran part of an axis of evil, slamming the door shut and, of course, reinforcing the hardliners back in Tehran. From Iran's perspective, the message was crystal clear. Cooperation gets you nowhere, and the U.S. is still out for regime change. I mean, they saw U.S. troops in Afghanistan on one side and Iraq on the other. They concluded that the only real guarantee of their survival was the ultimate deterrent, a nuclear weapon. And so, the secret program went into overdrive. Now, this nuclear ambition brought the world to the brink of another war. But, and this is a huge but, it also led to the most significant diplomatic effort in the entire history of this conflict. In 2015, the unthinkable happened. After years and years of tense, down-to-the-wire negotiations, a landmark deal was struck. It was this historic attempt to solve the nuclear crisis through diplomacy rather than force. The logic of the deal was pretty simple, really. It was a trade-off. Iran would accept severe, verifiable restrictions on its nuclear program, and in exchange, the world would lift the crippling economic sanctions that had just hammered its economy. For a moment there, it really seemed like a new path was possible. For Iran, this was more than just about sanctions relief. It was a chance to finally break out of its international isolation, to rejoin the global community. There was this genuine sense of optimism that maybe, just maybe, this could be a new beginning. But for Israel, the deal was seen as a historic, catastrophic mistake. The view from Prime Minister Netanyahu and many others was that lifting sanctions would just give Iran a flood of cash to fund its proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas, making the region far more dangerous, not less. The opposition was fierce, and it was total. And then, just 3 years after it was signed, the deal collapsed. The United States unilaterally pulled out, reimposing even harsher sanctions. That brief chapter of hope was over, and the conflict snapped right back to a state of extreme tension. And that brings us to today. The current state of affairs is best described by this one word: brinkmanship. Iran is enriching uranium closer than ever to weapons-grade levels, its proxies are attacking U.S. and Israeli interests, and all sides are constantly pushing each other right to the very edge, trying desperately not to be the one to tip the region into a full-scale war. Which leaves us with the central, really unsettling question. From allies to sworn enemies, from direct confrontation to proxy wars and nuclear standoffs, this 40-year shadow war has constantly evolved, but it has never ended. So is there a path to de-escalation, or is this just the permanent reality for the Middle East?